Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome to 2025.
Here we are.
We made it.
We made it. Wow, 2025 feels like a wild number.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
There's an auspiciousness to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonder how I feel about it. I feel great.
Great.
Yeah. I love it.
It's fine.
You know what? It's fine.
It's just fine. Let's not be too boastful. Let's just keep
I
it.
think last time we did that, it was 2020.
Nope. We're going to keep it on the.
We were like, 2020!
2020
Woo!
vision.
Yeah.
Woo! No.
No.
We're not doing that again.
No. Boastful is fine. Hopeful, not boastful. Like, it's going to be good. We got this. Not like, this is the best. It's the 20s. This year, Halloween's on a Friday. Cinco de Mayo is a Taco Tuesday. I remember reading that meme. It was just like how all these holidays lined up on what would be the perfect day of the week.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'm just going to keep it on the even Stevens.
Doing a great job. Anything going on that we want to talk about before we talk about? It's New Year's.
So are you reading Be Here Now?
Not yet. I picked it up.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
When did you get that book?
Yesterday. You were gone.
Wow.
Yeah, I hit the bookstore and picked up some stuff. It's one of those things. For some reason, it popped up in my TikTok algorithm. People talking about that book. I'm like, you got to read this. It's mind-blowing and blah, 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 blah. And I remember even asking you about who exactly Ram Dass was. And so, yeah, found it. And I got, you know what? I have a feeling. I'm flipping through some of the sections. And there's a section in the back. It's like cookbook for whatever. And it's just like practices and things. I'm like, oh, a lot of this stuff seems really familiar. Oh, a breathing exercise?
Oh, weird.
I know what that is.
Weird.
I know.
Where did this come from?
Yeah. Hey, you don't have to tell me. I'm coming to class tonight.
You are coming to class. Yeah. That's good, because then I'm going to lure you to dinner.
Oh, I was thinking we would do that anyway.
Oh, good. I love it.
Are you luring me somewhere goofy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't going to suggest Howie or any place you hate, so. Yeah, because you make that face.
Yeah.
Make the face. Nobody wants to go to Howie with me.
No.
Nobody. Jessica hates it. You hate it. Never get to go to Howie. It's a very sad scenario.
I'll go. It just seems like it's going to be cold in there.
Oh, okay. Well, let me find you a restaurant with a hearth.
God, I wish.
That'd be great.
This doesn't have a hearth. What about Mix?
Yeah, Mix is okay. Like, as far as the restaurants, so I think what happens at Mix is I do think that there must be some like trickiness in the kitchen. I think that they have high turnover of chefs.
Oh, okay.
And so then there's new cooks and newbie cooks. You know what they do? Oversalt everything.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes like I'll order a salad at Mix and I'm like, was there salt in that salad? Like, what is happening?
I thought they had a good Caesar salad.
They do. It's very salty.
See, I like that. I'll get anchovies on it.
Yep. You do.
You know what's funny is in having this conversation, and we're kind of not complaining, but sort of thinking about, when we lived in Hoosick Falls, and anything like this was 50 minutes away.
50 minutes away.
So thankful.
Thank the
Gratitude.
goddess for the food scenario in Ithaca, New York.
Gratitude.
The only thing it's missing is a Turkish restaurant.
True.
It's the only thing.
Yeah.
So if someone could get on that, that would be great.
Yeah. New Year's came and went.
Mm-hmm. We
somehow stayed up till midnight. I
did.
blame you.
Okay.
We were like, we're going to be in bed by 10. We didn't even leave where we were until 10:30.
It's ridiculous.
I know.
I don't know what we were thinking.
To be fair, we were having a good time and didn't even notice the time.
We didn't. I mean, I was definitely like, why am I yawning so much?
Because we're
old.
I
didn't actually look.
And it's tired.
I didn't actually look and see what time it was when I had that thought.
It was a good time, though. It was fun. You know what's funny is that in the text thread of the party was the thought, that was a fun party. Great time. Hey, let's
have a party a month.
Let's have a monthly dinner. I'm like, yeah, I've seen this conversation before.
We have seen these conversations before with our friend groups.
This is almost the same group. Very similar.
Very similar. Mm-hmm.
And the idea was Tasty Buds.
Yeah.
which didn't last.
Didn't go beyond the idea.
Yeah.
Well, I already called dibs that we get to have the St. Patrick's Day party.
I mean,
Obviously.
we're having a party. If people are going to come to it, that's going to be the monthly thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. I mean, I'll go if someone else wants to have another monthly dinner. I'll go. But
Okay.
yeah,
Well.
there's already one corned beef brisket in our chest freezer.
Okay.
We get paid tomorrow. I'm going to go find another
You're
one.
gonna go just keep every time.
It's like
a corned beef a week
every
until the freezer is full.
Every payday from now until March. I
Not
do a
that
couple
many.
things.
I mean, every other week.
Well, I'm going to go,
Okay.
I take out some cash, put it in one of these books.
Find a corned beef appropriately themed book.
Oh, well, it's got to be the Irish history one.
Okay.
Not to be too on the nose.
Jeez.
But I'm going to do that and find a brisket because we didn't have one for St. Patrick's Day.
We didn't. And you can't really buy them in September.
No.
So.
Nope. I looked. Tried.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're preparing for another major holiday.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I mean, it's 2 months away.
It is. And it's interesting that you bring this up because what are we actually here to talk about today?
Oh, we're here already. What are we?
We're going to talk about some archetypes because in the fall we talked about the archetype of the witch and the archetype of the lover.
We did?
Didn't we? Or did we miss that one? Or did we talk about the mother and...
Now...
When was the last time we had an archetype chat? Damn!
I was just about to say, we're not live right now.
We're not live.
I could pause and go look to see which ones we talked about.
Let's just skip all that part.
Okay, you don't want me... Because we definitely didn't talk about... I thought we talked about the warrior and the...
And the mother.
And the mother. Yes, that's what we did.
So we forgot to do this in the fall then.
Okay, warrior and mother, when is that? That is... Summertime.
Yep.
I don't think we talked about it in... We might have.
Anyway.
And I didn't know that there was I don't know why I'm surprised, a seasonal correlation to the feminine archetypes.
You didn't?
No.
Yeah, there's a seasonal...
Why would I just know that? I mean, I feel like I should by now.
There's a seasonal component to the archetypes through the wheel of the year. And then there's also a seasonal component to the archetypes in the timeline of our lives.
Yes.
So there's always going to be like that correlation, similar to Ayurveda, right? Like you can have your dosha, but there's also a dosha of the season, and there's also a dosha of the time of life you're in. So
this makes me think that sometimes men complain that women are complicated. And I think that's because we're just not paying attention to the cycles.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. I think if we just tuned into that, I think that would solve a lot of problems.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, so the season that we're in right now, it's winter. We surpassed the winter solstice. And we'll be riding this train of the way that we want to show up in the world, like a dominant. Again, it's not like I can't be in a different archetype. Obviously, we cycle through archetypes weekly. We might call in an archetype because we have to go do a thing.
Yeah,
and it's like
that's what I find myself doing.
Yeah.
Is that more typical in masculine energy people than feminine?
I don't think so. I think anybody can bring awareness to it. Like I know that there are certain archetypes that I can bring to a meeting, and there's certain archetypes I can't. Like they've got to stay home. And
I want to unpack that later.
And I have to also recognize that there can be some resistance to doing certain things when a certain archetype is dominant.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to give an example because we're going to talk about the archetypes of the winter. So from now through the spring equinox.
Till St. Patrick's Day.
Till after St. Patrick's Day.
Look at that.
We're in wintering season. And like the archetypes that show up are the king and the crone. And sometimes people don't like the word crone because we have an obsession with youth in our culture. So there's a resistance around like being a crone, you know, like I always think of Alan Rickman's character in Robin Hood.
That's my wife, Crone.
That's my wife, Crone. Like she's not a great example of a crone, or a witch for that matter. But anyway, sometimes that archetype is called wise woman. Sometimes sage.
Sage sounds pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. And I was trying to come up with like it's a whole other layer that we don't need to get into right now. But I was like, what happens? Like, what is the fully merged archetype that arrives when king and crone are balanced within a human?
Oh, are we coming up with a name? Oh, in a human,
Yes.
not like in a pairing.
Right.
Okay.
In like if you
Oh,
were
okay.
fully
Sure.
integrated
Uh-huh.
with your wise woman and your king that's within you,
Yep.
what is the energy of that? What is the
Oh.
and I think it's a visionary.
Okay.
I think it's a visionary. I think it's someone who holds that bigger picture, weaves together the wisdom through like time and experience and ages. And it's not the visionary of like the way that we think of like entrepreneurship, right? Where it's like go, 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 do, do, do.
Yeah.
It's like a greater vision and a keeper of that vision and a holder of that vision. So like when things get a little wonky, you can come back to, no, like this is the vision. Remember the vision. Remember the vision.
Oh, I like that. Well, I mean, are we just, for the book that we're working on, I say working on in the loosest of air quotes. I'm working on it. I don't know what you're doing.
Oh, okay.
Where we're talking about the masculine, feminine archetypes working together in conjunction. So wait, are we going to come up with a separate name for each of them as a pair?
Or like the energy that is produced. Yeah.
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 Oh, that's awesome.
Right. So when the feminine energy rises up from root to heart and the masculine energy drops down from crown to heart, and there's that merge at heart center, heart chakra. What is the energy that is produced from there?
I don't know.
Visionary, I think.
That's good. All right.
So it's the season.
You just pulled your weight right there. I mean, for how much work you haven't been putting into this,
I'm making up for it.
You're just like, you're like the trash heap from Fraggle Rock. I'm just gonna visit you every now and then.
Do not call me the trash heap from Fraggle Rock.
She was so wise. That's a great example of Crone.
She's the crone.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, I won't call you the trash heap. I'm sure I can.
Are we going to find Muppet representations of every single archetype? Because I feel like that's
what
on
was
the
a
horizon.
Muppet? A Muppet King.
Who's the Muppet King?
Yeah, I don't know. It'll come to me.
Okay.
But yes, we are going to find We're going to find terms we use for the combination of those two energies.
Yeah.
And a Muppet version.
I love it.
I say trash heap in the most respectful.
Trash heap.
I've called people trash heaps and not meant it the way I mean it when I talk to you.
Well, that's the problem, right? Is like if people are just like, oh my God, Matt and Jeannie were on the podcast. Matt called her a trash heap. It's not a vibe, honey.
Do you think that anyone that's going to listen to this is going to hear you and sense, like, oh, I mean, yes, if you called me a trash heap, I'd be like, wow.
Anyway, so we're in this season, and an example of it is like, this week I happen to also be in my crone wise woman archetype, so I'm in that archetype. And it's the season of that archetype. So this is like a double whammy.
Yeah.
And then we had to go up on this like overnight excursion, not too far away, a couple hours away, to see a venue for a retreat. I did not want to do that. Because I don't want to go on an adventure when I'm in my crone. I don't want to go on an adventure in the winter unless it's to a place where it's very, very warm and balmy for the most part. So it was tricky because I'm like, I don't have the energy. I don't have the fire to put behind like being sparkly and in anticipation about like, this is gonna be a new place and what can we do here and like digging into creativity and what kind of retreat would be held here, all of those things. So it's like it's an uphill battle where it doesn't need to be,
right?
You know, where you can plan these things or do these things in a different time of the month and a different archetype that you're in that is going to balance out the crone.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is good information to have because a week from today, which I don't know how that's already here.
No, it's perfect timing.
Well, but how going to Iowa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
yeah. For me anyway.
Is it? Will your crone era be over by then?
So the week of my crone will be over.
Oh,
and I will move into maiden.
Oh, okay.
Which is the perfect adventure friend.
Yeah, it is.
She's the perfect adventure friend.
Well,
so
it's
it's
good
like,
I mean, I was about to like channel the king next week,
Mm.
which the perfect balance for the maiden is not the king, it's the wizard.
Right, the magician.
Magician. Did I say wizard?
You did. The magician.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Channel my wizard.
So even though we're obviously still going to be in Crone season,
Mm-hmm.
I will have shifted archetypes. So at least it's not like really
Right.
drudging
Double
forward.
Crone. Double Crone is rough.
Double Crone is just not interested in leaving the house.
It's like double reverse Uno. It's
like-
rough.
It's rough. Double Crone's just not interested in leaving the house.
Mm.
So, Crone archetype is about being very internal, very introspective, into like reviewing what is working, what isn't working. Crones can do really great planning based on the information that they already have, but they're not interested in executing any of those plans at that time. So, like, as a part of our program schedule, because I get to do this, our advanced teacher training program pauses.
Yeah.
During the really like deepest months of the Crone. So from solstice to Imbolc, February 2nd ish, we're on break for that program.
What a great metaphor for how we wish we could operate. Where like
for real,
we just shut down, we become introspective, we rest.
Yep.
We get ready for
Yep.
a little prep for the upcoming growing season.
Mm-hmm.
That's dope. Yeah.
It is. It's pretty dope.
Well done. Well, I mean, this was not the first iteration of this too. I remember like when this 300-hour, the first time you did it, it was like starting in September or like get it done by January. You tried to make it a semester. And it was just, I remember you saying like, we can't, I'm not doing this again.
I'm not doing this again.
This is too much.
Well, and it doesn't give time for integration. Like, I think that one of the things that the King and the Crone teaches us, potentially, if we're actually paying attention and we're being in awareness around it, these two archetypes teach us the incredible wisdom that is in the pause.
Yeah, very much so. And I was reflecting on the balance of the two when you were talking about the Crone being inward and introspective and hibernating, basically.
Yep.
Whereas the King is a little bit of the opposite, and there's the balance because the King is about seeing.
Yes.
Like seeing the realm, seeing the people, not to be seen by them, but to see them.
Yep.
And like that's like the care of the realm and like looking outward.
Yeah.
Such a balance.
Well, and it's why that's such a beautiful, like, in partnership and relationship, why it works so well to show up in that way is like the Crone loves support in her ability to go within. The Crone
What? Nothing. That was funny. Sorry. Go ahead.
The Crone loves support in her space and time of being able to be introspective and go within. So like the King showing up and kind of being in that, like, what do you need? What do you need? How can I be of use and service to you in that way? Further supports the Crone feeling like I can take this time and space to look at, what's going on internally or the wisdom that I've collected over the last season. Yeah. So they work together really well. And the Crone wants to be seen, not necessarily in a way of like, bright, shiny center of the stage. It's not maiden energy like that.
Oh yeah.
It's more of like a reverence and respect for the work that the Crone has put in, of the wisdom that they've collected over the years, and how they bring that into spaces. And I think that culturally Crones would self-identify, if you're in Crone time of life, menopause, perimenopause, and beyond, there can be this feeling of being invisible.
Yeah.
Of suddenly
culturally
feeling
or
unseen.
socially.
Yeah, socially and culturally, like just older women being completely unseen. I mean, we think about how we experience older women in movies and film and Hollywood. You know, it's like we have women in their late 30s playing grandmothers. Like, so it makes sense that that someone in their crone time of life would feel like their relevance is waning when it should actually be the opposite.
Yeah.
It should be more relevant because, I mean, a crone, I was thinking about this morning. I don't know what made me think about it, actually, because it was before we decided this is what we were going to talk about today. The crone in the context of grandmother.
Yeah.
Like, there are 3 species on the planet that are grandmothers.
Yeah.
Like, other species don't live beyond their ability to reproduce.
Huh.
So, you know, I'm pretty sure. I mean, please fact check me. I'm pretty sure that it's whales and elephants and humans.
Oh, what about? I mean, what about like primates, like gorillas?
I don't know if they live beyond. Like, I think that they're able to reproduce for most of their lives. I don't know though. Maybe the great apes.
That's what I mean, I am not basing this on anything, but that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, like gorillas, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
whales, but whales and elephants.
Whales and elephants. Well, and I remember them talking about it on that whale watch that we went on.
Oh yeah.
They were talking about that because, like, I think that was shortly after Luna was born, and I had a whole thing about it. Like,
yeah, that was September. It was late September.
She was just a few weeks old.
Right.
And I had a thing of, like, listening to the whale watch person talk about, the guide talking about how whale grandmothers will, really take care of everyone that's in their little pod. And
did you start to cry?
I'm sure. I mean, that whale watch was nuts.
It was a great whale. It was amazing.
Insane. Like, we saw like 30 whales.
Yeah, that was bananas. There were so many times where the guys like look off the side of the boat. You see those bubbles? It's just like, just watch those. And like,
how they were like feeding each other. And that was like, in and of itself, it was a mind-blowing whale watch. And I don't know if it was like, I've always gone on whale watches in like the summer months.
That was my first one.
And that was your... I'm like, don't expect this on other whale watches. This
never
happens.
You should never go on another one again.
I don't know if it could be beat. Yeah. Yep.
That's so cute that the whales.
Right. So
elephants.
So when we think about that, like, however many species and animals there are living beings on the planet, and there's very limited, that function within the crone aspect of life. Like, you would think in a sane culture that we would be like, wow, this is something to just like completely I mean, good God, we want to talk about our opposable thumbs like it's the most important thing in the whole world. Like, this is proof. Right. This is proof we have evolved. I think that this, more than anything, is like such an indicator of a gift. I don't know. It feels very special to me. Like, that age should be revered more than it is.
Yeah, and it's funny when I'm ever more thankful that to go to our family like unit, right, where we are occupying those roles, you and the crone, and I don't know what the grandfather is. If it's king, maybe, you know what I mean? Just how like important it is. Like, I was close to my grandparents. They were an hour or so away. Not so, like, I remember having friends whose grandparents were like local, right? And just how fortunate to be so local and involved and not be like hours upon hours away. Yeah, I think it's part of the necessary. Like, when you see that dynamic play out in a regular basis, like those roles, and how, like, because while the parents are still like technically adults, but there's a different sort of energy, and it needs to be balanced. And that's where the grandparents can come in, not just come in and be like, say yes to everything that the kid wants, which of course is part of the deal, but there's also like some sort of balancing of energies where, you can balance out the frenetic high energy with some, not temperance, but some groundedness.
Yeah. I mean, you're archetypally in a different time of life.
I know.
And there's just less, well, there's also so much less pressure being a grandparent.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like, so
That's
much
true.
less pressure.
I know. I mean, you could speak to this. Like, how much pressure did you feel as, like,
to
for
do
many
things
reasons?
right, to, like how your children's behavior is a reflection of you. So then you become a little bit like helicoptery and obsessive and, and also the like you're too in it. Like it's too much a 24/7 in it that you can't like it's hard to zoom out and be like, is this a big deal? Do I need to make this a big deal?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that being a grandparent gives you that. It gives you the life experience, but it also gives you the space and perspective of like, I don't need to engage in this power struggle right now with a 3-year-old.
Right.
Like, cool. Don't wear socks. Don't care.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm more so in Enchantress Witch archetype than I am in my Crone as far as time of life.
Oh yeah.
And yet it's right there. Like it's very much just right there and I can tap into it so easily.
I know. Isn't it interesting how like the tapping into archetypes when you are aware of them and need to tap into them, but how much easier it is to tap into certain or difficult to tap into others based on the time of life you are. You know what I mean? Like I can find myself easier tapping into king energy than like warrior energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As far as like sliding into one or the other, there's a feeling inside where it's like, okay, here's the king and I know what that feels like and I know what it needs right now and it's really easy. It's like, oh, we need a warrior, I got to muster. Or it's like I need to like do more to be either of the archetypes kind of thing, you know. So fascinating.
And less so in the summertime. I mean, we talked about this, right? Like you have so much more fire, so much more energy.
Oh, me?
You specifically in the summertime. And I think that that's generally true for people. What are 5 words you would use to describe the king?
Jesus Christ. Can I look at my note card over there?
You can look
I
at
took
whatever
notes
you want.
when I reread the book.
This isn't live.
What?
This isn't live.
My notes. I should have just had my notes ready. I'm getting hungry. Ate all the bangers the other day. This is a bangerless house.
Damn.
Yeah. All right, here we go. You can ask me that question again.
What are 5 words that you would use to describe the king?
Whew, man, let me think about that. Or just checking my handy dandy note card. Okay, let's see. I want to say provider, but maybe not provider. I'll say stability, grounded, nurturing. I'm gonna say like grower, because like nurturing, because nurturing is like could be, because one thing of the metaphor, one thing that the either book mentioned or I thought of was like a king will like the king energy is the garden energy, like literal plant seeds and nurture to feed like the realm, the realm, so to speak. Yeah, it's so. I mean, you'd almost, if you didn't know which archetype you were talking about, you would almost call it a mothering archetype.
Yeah.
Definitely like a parental, paternal, caring for people energy. Yeah. Those 5 words?
I think so.
Oh.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like the king also has that eagle eye view
Mm.
of the realm,
Yeah.
you know, and understands how things work together. I think about when I think about King from like a leadership perspective, right? Like one of the things I think is interesting about all of these archetypes is when you apply them to like your work environment, and
Yeah.
obviously this is this is our work. We're doing work right now. Being in whatever field you're in,
Mhm.
and then noticing what your default archetype is in your work self, in your
Yeah.
work hats, and King leaders are the leaders that I feel the most comfortable with.
Yeah.
They are like, because they're not micromanaging.
Right. King in his fullness.
Right.
Healthy king.
Yeah, because it's not, we're not talking about like tyrants.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny you say job. I reflect back on my, I was going to say my past life job, which is really just what I did over 10 years ago, is being a teacher, right? And I did that from the age of like 27 to 36 or so. That for me was like my magician era.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the main archetype there, just from the nature of the job, right? You're trying to like get students interested, curious, excited about things. And it's like, what can I teach you that I find interesting and cool, and what can make you excited about learning, kind of thing. So like, and it's easy to channel that. If I had to do that job now, that would take some mustering.
Yeah. Different
time of life.
Just different time of life. I mean, maybe that's the teacher to administrator pipeline is the magician to king energy.
Oh my God. That's so true.
It's
wow,
like,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like, yeah, you kind of run out of steam as you get older. I don't know, but like being administrator is not any less chaotic. In fact, it seems
definitely
more
not.
chaotic.
But you're not trying to rally children to be excited about the Crusades
4 times a day. Right.
Like, it's a different, it's again, it's much more like zoomed out, eagle eye view, like checking out how these things work together. I like to think about how the wise woman or the crone shows up in regards to leadership too, because I think that like there are ways that all of the archetypes can be a leader. And I think that the way that the crone does it is it's very much like trusting that everybody is in their respective position because they are good at that position.
Right.
And so again, it's not that like I need to control or manipulate or micromanage what's going on. In Wise Woman, it's like, you ease back a little bit and you're like, my role is to be the visionary, is to hold that vision and to see where there might be some pitfalls that need to be addressed. Or maybe even recognize patterns, because everything is a pattern. So the longer that you've been paying attention to something, if you're stepping into your wisdom, you're looking at like, oh, this is what has happened in the past. And so how are we adjusting what we're doing so that we don't run into this as an issue again.
Right.
And they hold that wisdom. They hold that longevity of memory and the resource that is like so key, I think.
In the book that I have about masculine archetypes, there's underneath each archetype there's subtypes, right? They talk about the realized masculine, for the man energy, for lack of a better term, and then there's boy energy,
immature energy.
Immature, right? I mean, they're both sort of positive and healthy, but one is the boy, not grown up yet. One is the man, grown. And beneath each of those types are shadow types, like the negative aspect of the boy energy, negative aspect of the man energy, and even more subdivided, there's passive and active, like, and separation. So, like, for example, you mentioned it before, how like the two shadow aspects of the king is the tyrant, which is like lacking the structure and afraid of being replaced and stuff like that.
Which
and
is what we're going to see take over the
Oh.
executive branch.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm just banking on the fact of the chaos and the inability to do most of what they want to do. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
And the passive side is the weakling, like the weakling prince sort of thing. And it's like more paranoid, like, you know, not secure enough, like paranoid, who's out to get me type thing. Do the feminine archetypes have any of those subdivisions?
Of course. Yeah. So, you know, there's going to be the unaware version or the shadow aspect of the archetype. And then the matured or aware version, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that like it's bad. It's just a lack of awareness, like autopilot version, which might not be exactly how you want things to play out. The thing about the crone, though, is that the crone, if we're talking about integrated, fully light aspect of the crone, that is a healed integration of all the other archetypes.
Okay.
And if there is a wound within the crone, very likely the root of that wound actually has to do with one of the other archetypes, not necessarily the crone itself.
Right.
Except for that wound of like isolation and separateness. So a wounded crone shows up like very withdrawn, very isolated, and also bitter because of it. So there is a bitterness that can show up in the way that the crone interacts in the world. You know, like I mean, I can think of my grandmother on my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
Like most of her life, she felt like life was happening to her, and very disempowered. Very like she would behave as though she was the queen and had a lot of power and bossing everybody around, and like she was pretty high maintenance. But underneath that was this overall feeling that like the things that happened in her life happened to her.
Okay.
And she didn't get to do the things that she wanted to do. She didn't get to have the things she wanted to have. So it became very much about like short-term satisfaction. And as she got older, she got more and more just like bitter, angry, sharp, pokey, and didn't have that ability to look at, you know, the bigger picture in her life or where grace showed up in her life or anything like that. So the shadow aspect of the crone can present very harsh. Like it's kind of like the caricature of the older woman that like, you know, we all cross a threshold, I think, where we no longer censor ourselves as much. Sure. And in a healthy way, that's great. We don't want to extinguish our lights, but in an unhealthy shadow aspect, it can come off as very cutting, very bitter, very reactionary.
Did you hate or love how you're describing various archetypes? And you can think of people that fit that archetype. Like, oh, someone popped in my head.
Ooh,
who
it's rough.
Fits that. And boy, it's just another example how, yes, we're all individual snowflakes. And people are people. And they behave kind of in a certain amount of ways, which makes archetypes so poignant. It's, as you're talking about, like the wounds or the healing necessary for the feminine archetypes, it seems to me the image came to me of like a braid, how like all 3 or 4 archetypes, maybe more depending on who you talk to, are all so intertwined. And for me, the masculine ones are so compartmentalized, or can be.
Makes sense.
Because it's like, well, here's my king drawer.
Yep.
I'm going to take it out and I'll just put the other 3 away. Would you agree with that analysis?
I mean, I think it makes sense to present them that way because masculine identifying people enjoy that. Like,
yes,
there is a comfort in compartmentalization.
very much so. There's a whole bit, this comedian or just guy.
There is.
Well, a guy that was talking about how the difference between he said men's brains and
Oh,
women's
is this
brains.
where he calls women's brains noodle brains?
Yes.
I mean, maybe we can say it's like a ball of yarn or something.
Okay, we'll
like
call it
noodle
the-
brain sounds.
Sure, I
like-
didn't name it, and we
It's
could
true.
we could
did
think of
not.
a more apt and beautiful name for it. But for now, we're going to go with noodle brain until we
Okay.
get someone else. Just because of all the noodles there's different
it's
strands of thought, and they're all clumped together.
They're all clumped together in a bowl.
Yeah.
It's a bowl of spaghetti.
Bowl of
Spaghetti brain.
And then with masculine brains have drawers, like you're going to take out, or have boxes.
Uh-huh.
Like this is my golf box.
My nothing box.
And then men have a nothing box.
Right.
Where they want to take that box out when they want to think about nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best box in the world.
Okay.
I'm serious.
Yeah, I mean, it's a clear indicator that the majority of meditation techniques in the world that we talk about and we share with each other are very masculine energy in nature, because there is this concept or idea that you get rid of your thoughts. Like that's the upper echelon of achievement, which is a funny thing to say, very Western thing to say, around being good at meditation. Like I sat there and I emptied my mind and I did nothing. And it's like, that's so not what the majority of meditation is. But because we have such a masculine spin
You
on
sound
it.
a little jealous.
No, I actually don't. I love my brain.
Oh, and you should.
I love my brain so
I love your
much.
brain.
So I mean, there was a time where I feel like my noodle brain was overwhelming and I would feel anxious, and like my personal way of handling it was thinking that I could hyper control what was going on in my life. And, you know, we all know how that turns out when we try to do that. Once I released this idea that I could like if I planned enough, organized enough, controlled enough, structured everything enough, then I wouldn't have the anxiety, or my brain wouldn't go from like one noodle to another noodle to another noodle to another noodle. Once I let go of all that, I'm like, oh, my brain is fucking amazing. My brain does some cool shit. It's funny too. Like, where does it even come from? I don't even know sometimes.
Well, and also I shouldn't make fun or talk down about noodle brain, because I kept a piece of paper. This was yesterday. I was at my desk doing things, and I had to keep a piece of paper for all of the things I thought of to like look up. I'm like, as I'm working, I'm like, oh, look at this thing. Oh, and these are all unrelated. It's like, oh, some books in the library. Oh, I'm gonna go to this store and look at this. Oh, what's that thing that guy said that in that band I want to listen to. And I had a list. Like, if I just read the list, you'd be like, what is this? This is a recipe for chaos. Like,
Yeah.
and this was all thoughts that came into my brain that got in the way of me trying to do what I was doing. So, like, that was noodle brain, man. Like,
Yeah.
I just, I realized I couldn't act on each of those thoughts if I wanted to get anything done.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to write them all down and act on them when it's time.
Well, and what's interesting, and I'm not saying that this is great, because I definitely will say that there is a significant detriment to multitasking. However, there have been studies done to show that feminine identifying people can multitask. Masculine identifying people cannot.
All right, well,
So
hold
if
on.
you followed one of those threads.
Hold on. Pre-K pause.
Do you need me to pull up the peer-reviewed studies?
No, I'm going to just reword what I know you're saying. Feminine embodied people multitask well
Yes.
and can do it
Mm-hmm.
with ease. Greater ease, with easier.
Yes. I would also assert that it is still not sustainable and it is exhausting.
Yes.
And this is why women walk around exhausted
Fair.
all the time. Yeah.
Masculine embodied people can not as well, and they won't choose to do it as often. Women will I will
don't
multitask.
think they can.
They totally can.
I don't think so. Didn't I show you those TikToks? Oh, we're
ones?
going to do one now. Where it's like tell a story while you cut out the shape of a body, right? Like,
yeah, it's cutting out like a gingerbread
yeah,
man.
you have to cut out a gingerbread man with scissors and paper while you tell a story.
That's right. That's funny.
And it's like masculine identified person after person after person after person after person,
right.
and they're either cutting or they're talking.
That's funny. You're right.
They cannot do both things.
It's so funny, and not because, like they were telling a story and they were getting caught up in it and engaged in it. Like they were just like trying to talk, looking at the scissors, or not talking at all, or like pausing to look up at the camera, basically. Yep. But it's not like, if I'm telling a story that's so engaging that requires motions and physical movement and sound effects, they got caught up on that and I forget to cut. Like, no, that's not what was happening. They just were like, couldn't pat their head and rub their belly at the same time.
They cannot. I mean, there are times where like you can't tell me the story you're telling me until like you turn off the sink water and the music that's playing in the background gets lowered.
Well,
like,
I mean, the music that lowers fine. You don't want to fight with the volume.
It's not the volume. It's not the volume.
Maybe it's a sensory thing. But in that example, it wasn't something that I was doing. Like, I wasn't like doing two things. It's like there's noise in the background. It's loud. I don't want to shout over it. Or it's distracting me. Or it's like I wasn't doing a task.
Right.
Which, like, I would like to try that.
But like, let's say you're like standing at the kitchen sink washing dishes.
Okay.
Right. And I ask you a question.
Okay.
You will turn off the water, dry your hands, and answer my question.
Okay. Now.
Or the question is a pocket veto. Like, I am not going to get an answer to that question in any way, shape, or form until you're done doing.
You realize what's going to happen.
I'm here for it.
Okay. The next time you ask me a question that requires an answer of more than a word.
Okay.
I'm going to go into the kitchen, get a potato and a potato peeler.
What? No.
And wherever you are, I'm just going to
need you to peel potatoes.
I'm going to peel a potato while I answer it.
We're going to do this for a week. And then at the end, we'll have to make something with those potatoes.
And gravy. Call it the mashed potato exercise.
The mashed potato exercise.
Can you tell your story?
It's always about potatoes with you.
What comes first, the end of the story or a plate of peeled potatoes?
I think this is fun. I like it.
I think it's very fun.
I like it. We got to get the problem with potatoes is that if they're exposed to the air, they will get like dark.
Yeah.
So we have to have we need to get like a clear container of water in the fridge so you can put the peeled potatoes in there, and then we'll just keep checking in on how many peeled potatoes are in.
We'll just do it around St. Patrick's Day, so we just already have our potatoes
ready for coal cannon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? Maybe I still maintain that the king in his fullness would realize each task deserves its full attention.
Yes, and what is also true is the king in his fullest is going to delegate those tasks anyway. Like, he's not going to be doing
not necessarily
a lot of them.
Not just for the sake of doing it. The king won't delegate instead of doing something just because he's the king, just because he can.
No, because he would see someone else that either this is the thing that brings them joy, or this is the thing that they're really good at, and he would.
Honey, you know what I realized you're really good at? You're so good at peeling potatoes.
So good at peeling potatoes.
Yeah.
King and wise woman. It's a great time of year. I think what's important for people to keep in mind is the tendency to perceive that they're not accomplishing enough this time of year. And then there's this almost like putting the cart before the horse potential around it. Like, well, we've got to do something, we got to do something. What have we even done? Or this, this is a great time of year to think about all the projects that you want to do in your house or outside, but not do them.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Right.
It's great planning time.
It is good planning time. And I think we're just so used to not allowing ourselves a lot of time to do that.
No.
Like, there's a lot of
terrible
just
at wintering.
Thinking and doing, and not a lot of thinking as in inspiration idea to execution as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, I mean, that's hard for me as a very grounded earth person. Like
Yeah.
the longer I have to execute something, it almost brings me more joy. Not that like I got to put it off, but like when some people bring in an idea like, "Oh, we're going to do this in 2027."
Mm.
That doesn't fill me with any dread or anxiety. That's like, this is awesome. I will dedicate every day, or I will plan and work. Like that level of like planning, thinking to execute and accomplish something is exciting to me. And
Yeah.
I love that. And to do it the other way where it's like, okay, let's do this thing right now, that requires leaning into a different archetype that I'm not naturally.
Well, you know what's interesting is in like the 80s or 90s, the slow food movement started in Italy.
Okay.
Where suddenly there was an awareness of how much efficiency, fast cooking, fast food, fast restaurants like was like kind of taking over.
Yeah.
And Italian culture was like, but what about like the benefits of slow food? And there's seasons that are for all of it, right? There's there and not like fast food in the sense of like drive through
Yeah. Right.
restaurants, but like the allowing food prep to take longer.
Yeah.
The allowing, like, it's not always this rushed experience.
That's what I do when I cook because I'm just so slow at it. It just takes forever.
Because you're doing something new, right? So it's
yeah.
like, can you take that like watch a 3-year-old make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? It's like a 45-minute expedition
Yeah.
that's going on. And then recently I read about a slow decorating movement. There's also slow reading movements, like this idea that like reading a book, it doesn't need to be like, this is where one of the things about like yearly book challenges get a little tricky.
Yeah.
Because it's like, are you savoring this book?
Right.
Or are you like, I got a quota,
right.
you know? And same thing about like, it used to be perfectly okay for authors to take a long time to write a book, for writers to take a long time to write a script, because things were produced so much slower.
Seriously.
There was just less volume of production.
Like, to speak on that, man, I feel like there are so many book series now that I learn about that they exist, and before I even know it, there's 2 sequels. Like, there's one book, like The Fourth Wing, I think it's called. It was like, I think it's not maybe a YA fantasy about dragons and stuff. And I remember that came out. I'm like, oh, maybe Abby and I will read this or whatever. And I feel like I just saw something about like the 4th book being released.
Yeah.
This is like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Or those Sarah J. Maas books, the Court of Thorn and Roses or whatever, like fairy smut. I feel like there's 12 of them. And I'm like, how?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, how many aspects of our modern culture and our day-to-day lives do we unconsciously even support this, like, if some is good, more is better. If we can do this, faster is the goal.
Yeah.
Like production. And so like The King and the Crone, they come in to be like, but what if you didn't have to? You know, like, what if you didn't have to rush everything? And you could slow down your reading, and you could slow down your writing, and you could slow down your cooking, and you could slow down your decorating. Like the slow decorating movement landed for me because I was like, it's like sometimes, like when we redid the library here, it was like a whirlwind.
Yes.
It was like a week.
Yeah, that mainly for me, it was that way because one of the children moved out of this room, and I wanted to have it done before another child can get the opportunity to move back in. So I'm like, this has to be done fast.
For me, I was like, we need to do this before program starts again, and I get super busy.
And I was super excited about it. Like, this isn't like painting the bedroom that you want to do.
Mm.
I have not really done anything to instigate that process
No,
forward.
it's very clear when a decorating project interests you, how much faster it moves in our house than if it doesn't interest you.
Zing.
Yeah.
Jeez.
However, I was thinking about this because I was like, so we had redone the entryway of the house, and there were still like there's it's been an evolving project. Like,
Yeah.
then there was like kind of the next level and the next level. And I've been waiting because if you watch films or TV series that take place in like the 16, 17, 1800s,
Okay.
inevitably you will see a scene, if they're doing it right, where there are curtains in front of the front door
Mm-hmm.
because old houses are drafty.
Yep.
And you're trying to keep as much heat in. And so I've wanted curtains in front of the front door, but it just has happened. So like the like I was looking for the right curtains, and it was taking me a while to find them, and I wasn't willing to just be like, these will work.
Right.
And so like the little touches that happen when you decorate something over time, as opposed to like this project needs to be done in the next 5 days.
Right.
So just, I think that that's what the King and the Crone bring in, and this time of year, wintering brings in, is like, sure, you can do it faster, but do you need to?
Do you need to?
And do you need to do it fast right now?
Yeah. Slow down a little bit. It's hard to do, but it's really necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Anything else you got to say about the King?
No, I think I said. Let's see. Anything else about the King? No. I think maybe that the King archetype is never really what we think it is. Like, what do you think of when you think of a king, right? Leadership, being in charge, being seen, and it's almost the exact opposite, where the king's focus is on others and making sure things are in a position to grow and be nurtured. You know, like it's very paternal in that way, and not just like a guy in charge, but like caring for and making sure people are cared for. Yeah.
Well, we just don't have a whole lot of examples in history of a balanced, mature king, right? Like, if we think about monarchy in a literal sense, it's always like extraordinary privilege, and lack of awareness, and being out of touch with what is actually going on in a particular area. I mean, when I think of king, I think of James Fraser from Outlander.
When do you not think about him?
Stop. He's not. I mean, like, there are great things about Jamie, but he's just all over the place for me. Dougal, on the other hand, liked him. But the energy of Jamie as like a land owning laird, right, in the 18th century, he did a really good job being like, I am here to make sure that everybody is provided for. I am not here to wield power and privilege and this highness over other people. And I think that we don't have a whole lot of like historic depictions of people who ruled in that way. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of high chair tyrants.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that one of the other notes on that card I made was, you know, checking your ego, right? It's like that, keeping it at bay. That's not why the king is needed. It's not to fulfill the ego. It's to care for others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well done, honey. 2 sets of archetypes down.
Yeah.
2
more
to
to
go.
go.
So we'll see you on St. Patrick's Day to talk about the next king, the next archetype.
Maybe in April.
Okay. We'll wait till it's actually spring. Awesome. For the Wi-Fi pod, this is Matt.
This is Jeannie.
Thanks, everyone.